hello everyone, and welcome to another special report on the AGA Network. We are coming to you to discuss a very important topic today, and that is critical race theory. What is critical race theory? I am joined by my friends Curtis Gehring and Josh All today as we go through this, giving you some perspective and sharing some of the background of what critical race theory really is and what critical thinking really is, critical theory is right now, and why it's affecting our society in such a way that it is. So, Curtis, give us a background of what you've been studying and how we can join in that study with you.
Well, for me, it's simplified into two groups. Critical race theory basically divides the world into two groups. You have your oppressor group and your oppressee group. Your dominant group, your subordinate group. And folks are no longer seen as individuals, but members of a particular group. And the movement is revolutionary in terms of trying to suppress, I guess, it goes back to Marxism. And I think that is what we need to define, first of all, because a lot of people don't know what Marxism is. I didn't know what Marxism was, except it was I had a negative connotation of it growing up in the United States, and freedom-loving capitalist and that sort of thing. Marxism was always a negative afterthought of what happened in Europe and Russia and that sort of thing. But these ideas have crept into our country. Through what could be termed a long march through institutions, first through academia, and then it's gone from there into government and business and that sort of thing. But Marxism is the belief that you had your two groups. You had your laborers and you had your the wealthy, or what were known as capitalists. And Marxism believed that the only way to gain equality was to overthrow the capitalist. And critical race theory has just taken class out of it and inserted race. And that's where we have now the white privileged dominant oppressor group. Of course, being white men, Christian capitalists, we fit into just about every oppressor group that you can think of. And of course, the oppressed would be the minorities, that's where the ideas of white privilege and white supremacy come in. And of course, the idea then is to overthrow that or cast that off of ourselves, I guess, if you will. And so, I guess that's a good starting place. But it's a very Marxist idea that is probably, I would gather to guess that there's not a whole lot of people that know what Marxism is.
Right. Yeah, I would bet that as well. So we're talking about critical race theory, but let's talk for a minute about just critical theorists. So in academia, they're all over the place, but they're looking at the world as a whole and trying to explain why the problems of the world exist. So they're looking to find problems in the world. They're trying to figure out how they exist and why they exist and the way they exist. And so they're taking this process of being critical and actually forming it into a process by which they judge everything. So you said Marxists were looking at class originally. And what they argue, these critical theorists argue, is that the reason that there are some groups in society, whether that's race, religion, types of groups or classes, is because that some are not as successful as others, and so we have to equalize that. And those are not as successful because there's power structures set up in society that are there to hold people down.
Yeah. And just on some notes I took here, it's the view of reality where human relationships are in a constant struggle. So this isn't something that has an endpoint. This is a constant struggle, ongoing. And it's in the terms of, like you said, haves and have-nots, between victims and the victimizers. And the problem is perpetual. This is not something that has a solution in mind. it is a constant struggle.
So we've seen over decades that Marxism has tried in this country, in the United States, to put people in classes, put people in groups. And you've seen that over, I mean, I've seen it in my lifetime, and I know it was going on long before I was on the planet, but they've always been trying to victimize a group. Now with critical race theory being this huge thing that's taken over corporations and government and different things, now it's not about this just general group, because that obviously didn't work. Now they're injecting race into the mix.
Yes, it's substituted race for class, and the same ideas. Mm-hmm. Again, you have your oppressor and oppressees, but it's not so much class, because the United States is different than many other countries where Marxism took hold. We have big middle class. We don't see class warfare the way that other countries have to this point.
Yeah, and we have individual freedom because of the documents on the wall behind you.
That's right.
We were founded on a document, not on a person's belief. We aren't under a king. We have personal freedom in this country. And the reason why Marxism hasn't held with class is because people from every class or every group have been successful, because some have had the drive and internal fortitude to fight through and get what they felt that they needed to get. And I think that is what sets America apart from many other countries where Marxism has ruled.
Mm-hmm. And again, according to this theory, the problem of the oppressor-oppressed relationships is remedied through injustice with justice, is remedying injustice with justice. So that's where you hear these terms. That's the terminology. And it is a lot of terminology that they use to kind of enforce or try to go forward with their ideas.
So a critical race theorist would say something like this, that white people wrote the laws of the United States, that the system is rigged in favor of white people because maybe they didn't do it deliberately, but somehow they created these laws to oppress every other group, every other race.
Well, because whites white people are the oppressor groups. Like I said, oppressor groups, we would fit the narrative of quite a few oppressor groups. So it's not just male, Christian, capitalist. It goes on, but white people don't have the moral authority because they are blinded by privilege. And when you see any in a comparison, if there's a comparison between groups and you see a negative outcome, if you will, between two groups, it is automatically a systematic racial or systematic problem.
Right. And we're seeing that all around in everything. If there is a win-lose scenario and the person loses, there is always another group that's responsible for that person losing and not their own individual responsibility. That's the problem.
Well, nothing else is considered except for
right, because when we don't have individual responsibility and individual freedom, then it has to be somebody else's fault. I didn't cause my own failure. Somebody else caused it for me.
And again, every remedy, it can only be remedied by every injustice has to be remedied by justice. That's the only outcome that they seek.
Right.
And, yeah.
So justice used to be that I have individual responsibility and freedom for myself. And if I fail, the justice is that I maybe lose money or I maybe, whatever. But the justice is personal justice, not against a class or a race.
Well, justice used to be, when I thought of justice, and maybe you guys can, how you see justice, but you usually see fairness. Justice today is seen as outcomes. There is a specific outcome. Justice is only seen in a specific outcome.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen that in cases all across the country, is that there isn't the universal assuming of innocence first, it's assuming of guilt first.
Well, and if you look at Georgia, they just passed some laws about the elections in that state, and it's automatically assumed that it hurt African Americans because of the photo ID and other things. So that was it could be presumed. It doesn't have to actually be actual. It could be if there's any presumed disparity. And basically, the word's disparity. If there's any disparity between groups, between oppressor and oppressee groups, the only outcome, the only remedy has to be justice in their terms, in the terms of critical race theorists.
Gotcha. Yeah. So explain a little more about the Marxist idea that this comes from. We know that Marxism, socialism, communism, they're all in the same boat. Definitely don't like individual freedom at all. That's not what they want. They want control. So what is a little more in depth on the Marxist part?
Well, I think you touched upon that with your critical theory more than I did. For me, it's very simple. The world is seen in dividing our population and populations into groups. So you're no longer seen for who you are, but what group you belong to. And that's the troubling aspect of this. It's no longer, Rob. It is you belong, and who do you belong to? And then from there, whether you have virtue or moral authority, all depends on your group that you're in.
Right. So all of it, when you play it all out, it all comes down to a disparity of most likely wealth and power. Those are the keys.
Well, okay, I would agree. Yeah. Wealth and power. Any disparity in any institution, education. If some folks aren't, if there's a disparity between SAT scores or ACT scores, the ACT is systematic. There's the problem systematically with the ACT. Policing. If there's a disparity between arrests, incarcerations, and other groups, there's a systematic problem. So I mean, you hear it every day in the news now. The word systematic racism. I mean, the president just used it yesterday. It is a part of our vernacular in everyday society. It's almost become accepted. Now, I don't know if people realize what they're saying when they're saying that there's systematic problems in a particular institution. They're not saying it needs tweaked. I mean, they're looking for revolutionary changes, and
do away with the whole thing.
That might be, basically, we've wondered. I've wondered why younger folks have issues with capitalism. And it goes directly to what they're being taught in school, and you cannot be a critical race theorist, and they'll tell you this, and be a capitalist. It is so if you're taught that that critical race theory is now the predominant teaching in some places, not everywhere, but some places, you're going to have a very, very negative view of capitalism.
Right.
I was just going to say this. This whole thing. I know somebody personally who hates capitalism, and this all started, I don't know, last year or something like this. Just extreme negative attack on the idea of capitalism. And at first you just kind of, okay, you maybe you don't know what you're talking about. And then the more and more I heard these things and read them from this person, I thought, okay, where's this really coming from? And now, I mean, after studying this stuff and learning about it, like I completely understand it's coming from the university level. I mean, these kids are being indoctrinated at that level, but...
Well, just real quick, Josh, It was at the university. It was a long haul. They call it the long march through institutions. It started in a few isolated academic higher ed institutions, but it's now pretty much taught at the high school, maybe junior high.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Is now it has
HR
It's
rooms.
not just in these universities. Yeah, you're right. It's in corporations, and it's in kindergarten.
Yeah, and I mean, there's an active lawsuit right now against the Ohio Board of Education for this exact thing of they're not holding public meetings. They're just going to vote that this is a part of the curriculum moving forward. And I think that as people wake up and understand what this really is, that it goes against everything that our country was founded upon, everything that guarantees our freedom, that hopefully this will enlighten people to actually not only research it, but take action.
Yeah. Wait, you say wake up. Hopefully it's before it's too late. If you look at some of the cities where they're having major riots, those are mostly younger generation folks, probably 30 and under. And I would say and I don't know, I don't have any proof of this, but I would say that's a direct correlation to what's been taught in their high school. So wherever that's taught, things like this, the revolutionary type, these kids aren't just trying to send a message. They're trying to revolutionize, defund the police. You mentioned that is one of the ideas.
Yeah, let's just get rid of them, and then we find out that doesn't work, and so they bring them back. I don't know
if they'll ever admit that it doesn't work. That's the thing is
they won't admit it, but it's proof that it doesn't work because they call them back because everything is just falling apart.
Well, the people that are defunding the police also are able to afford security,
private security, right?
So I don't know if they'll ever admit that this isn't working.
Well, they won't. And this is the problem with somebody being an elected official for 40 years. I mean, we see it in our local community here. 30, 40 years in elected official and really are just doing what they want. They're not representing us anymore. They're doing what they want and pushing whatever agenda they want. And, I've always been a proponent of term limits, but I mean, we're seeing the effects of 40 years when an elected official goes out on the day of a court case coming out and incites riots. There's a problem.
Now that's something that people need to understand and look at these situations when they happen. So that congressperson went and is, demonstrating for abolish the police, defund the police, as she takes a private security detail with her. Exactly what you just said. So look at the hypocrisy. Are they, they can say whatever they want but look at their actions, these people. And that'll tell you where their priorities really are.
And that was way outside our district.
Way outside. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think that what we're talking about is critical race theory. What is it? I think that we have to look at the real-time data that we're engaged in, because we can talk about this theory. We can talk that it goes back to Marxism, it goes back to communism, and they're not going to be walking people out into the suburbs and putting them in communes and controlling what they do. They're going to have a corporation, i.e., you can't go to Walmart without a vaccination card. You can't. That's a class now. They just created another class. It's you have a card or you don't have a card. All that stuff. They're trying to separate people and into different things, whether it be race or other things. But what I believe is that the American people, if they could just understand how we got here, and that's why they've taken history out of school. That's why they've done all this, to abolish history. That's why they're tearing down monuments. That's why they're doing all this. It is a tactical approach to demoralize a population that believes that they have individual rights.
Right, and it's not. Yeah, you've mentioned history. It's definitely, you're right about history, but it's filtered into math. There's now woke math. So there's not it'll reach all aspects of our society. But one of the things, it's probably difficult. I can imagine as young folks sitting in classes, they're getting taught. No one wants to be called a racist. Nobody wants to be a racist. And so when you hear, and here's a direct quote from Kendi, Ibram Kendi, who is the leading guru in critical race theory. And according to him, in order to truly be anti-racist, you have to truly be anti-capitalist. So as a kid, that's probably tough. That's tough to handle, because you look around, nobody wants to be an anti-racist. So if the only way to be an anti-racist, I must have to,
hate capitalism.
and you're being taught that in school where, these are you're a kid. So your teachers are people you look up to. You trust them. They're the adults. They're the people who, quote unquote, know, right? I mean, so whenever you have those people pushing this thought process.
Doesn't the problem go back to we aren't teaching people how to think anymore? We're teaching them what to think?
Well, I think that goes to critical thinking.
I know.
That goes back to not critical theory,
right?
But critical think. The critical thinking is part of it, what we should be doing is in education, but not. It's different from, critical racism.
Yeah. I go back to education used to be we're going to teach you how to think through scenarios and how to come to a solution, and now we're going to teach you the solution, how to just go take the test, because we need the grade to get our approval for next year, and to make sure we're hired back on. Go spend 80% of your time learning to a test and learning how to answer the questions in the right way instead of how to think about what you're actually doing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And the thing that I want to try to stress is that this is a perpetual problem. This is not. I heard somebody say, ask somebody who's a critical theory, when's enough? When has there been enough revolution? And there isn't. It's a perpetual. Once they find that they've maybe accomplished one area, it'll just keep going into other areas. So it's going to be with us for a while.
It's an amazing thing to look at, and so when we look through history, let's walk out critical race theory, all the theorists of critical this stuff. Let's walk it all out to its end goal. If you go all the way out to the end, everyone is equal except for the elite. Everyone else that's what they're trying, correct? Or am I wrong?
I don't know. I don't know the end game. I really
Well, if we look at Marxism around the world and what's happened, that's what it's been. It's been there's one ruling class, everybody else is equal on the bottom, and it's never ended well.
It never ended well. No, and if you think about in France, did those people who were laborers then did they live in their huts again after they were? So that's what I meant. I don't know what the goal is. So, the founder, one of the founders of the BLM movement, I don't know if you heard this or not.
Oh, yeah.
So is the end goal to own a lot of houses? And is it just to flip the oppressed? That's why I don't know the.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's so, you can't take anything that they say for what they actually mean, because again, look at the actions. Why does she have 4 houses worth, what was it, like 3 million some in the United States, and then apparently an apartment in the Bahamas or something? It's about money.
It all goes back to wealth.
It's all about money. Yeah.
Yeah, it all goes back to wealth and wealth inequality.
Right. So what is the end goal? I don't know. Is it all that we're wealthy and
No, I don't think that we can say what their end goal is, because it's just a deranged mind of thinking. But I think that we can look at evidence of the same kind of thinking throughout history and know what the outcome will be, not the end goal, but we know what the outcome will be.
I see.
There's never been a successful Marxist communist government. I mean, you can kill tens of millions of people and it's still not successful. It still fades away.
Actually, it leads to that.
Yeah, it does ultimately. Yeah, because you're going to have people that disagree with what you're doing or just in the way. And they don't fit the paradigm. But that's ultimately, though, getting everybody to the same economic level is communism. So the Nazis said you could own a piece of property, but you could only use it the way that we tell you to use it. And that's what I believe as we're describing this, the tearing down, the revolution part of this critical race theory and critical theorists as a whole is to get everybody down to the same level, which is communism. And anywhere that socialism, communism, Marxism has been tried around the world, you can go back and look through history and find those countries, either they're not on the map anymore, or they're the biggest wastelands of the current globe. Because if you lower everybody down to the bottom, there is no one to pull anybody up.
Well, what you just said, that I think that is the ultimate end goal of what they're trying to do, is it's abolish the middle class, abolish the people. So you have your elite ruling class, and then everybody else is poor, is at the bottom class. And that goes back to the removal of God from schools and everything, really. I mean, they're trying to take God out of everything, because if God rules your life, then that's how America has been run. I mean, the people will run it because we believe in a higher power. We're operating under a higher power, and it's not the government. It's not this elite ruling class.
Right.
But if they want to rule, then they need to make sure that the people don't have that, belief in a higher power that's not them.
But it goes to show you, because everything you said is absolutely right. It's never worked. It's never going to work. And back in the 80s, I think a lot of people thought that, well, socialism's dead. The Berlin Wall came down. Reagan, the Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I think a lot of people had the false hope that, or the false idea that it's over. But that shows you that socialism is more than alive and well.
Well, many of communist socialists throughout the years have said that they're not going to attack America from the outside. They're going to attack it from the inside. And we know those quotes, but we're witnessing it on our watch, which is something that we need to be aware of. We need to not just be aware of it, but we need to take action against it.
Mm-hmm. It is. And critical race theory is not just of course, it's in schools, it's in the government, it's in business. It's also in churches and ministries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the church has abdicated its role and really turned over most of its role to the government. And so people, when they need money or they need assistance, the first question is, did you go to the government? When they need food, the first question is, do you go to the government? But see, that's not how it's always been. It's always been, prior to this thought process, you would go to the church. You would go to the people that actually care about humanity, not try to rule humanity. And that's where I think that we've gotten to this place, is that the church has really let go of its role. And I don't know that, I mean, hopefully through revival and awakening, it can take it back up, but I don't know that would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right about that. That is how they wanted to tear down America, was through the school system, through education, because they want to create that generation of people who have been taught from a young age that America is inherently racist, that we're founded on racist principles. It's a terrible country. They're being taught to hate America. So when you get so that generation of people will grow up to do what? Go into the military, go into law enforcement, with the idea that America's a bad place and we hate this place. So, and then I look at it and I say, okay, if America is that terrible of a place, why are people risking their lives to get here? Why do people come here?
Why do they stay here?
Why do they stay here? And why aren't American citizens, leaving at a high rate to say we're going to go somewhere where it's better? Because there is no place better.
Yeah, still city on the hill, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're leaving socialist places
To come here.
That's
Right.
what I was going to say, is the people that will speak out the most against what's happening right now are the people that came here legally and wanted to become American citizens because they wanted to leave this crap behind. Mm-hmm. And now they're coming here like, what's happening?
The most vocal people that I've heard against all of this are the people that came from socialist communist countries.
Yeah. And I would, 10, 15 years from now, I think the Democratic Party is banking on future Democratic voters as much, why they're so apathetic toward the border. But be interesting to see, because, there's also a lot of momentum that can be picked up by the Republicans if they can get their word out there and say, hey, or not, I shouldn't say just Republicans, it's not a Democrat-Republican issue, but the anti-socialism message would probably find very fruitful soil with those folks.
Yeah, I think that the policies that are being put into place in this day, we won't see the full ramifications of it for many years to come. Mm-hmm. And whether that's the open borders or whatever. But I believe that we're at a place where if we don't turn the tide now, whether it be legally or any other action taking on this process, we're going to see a country that's completely divided as it was years ago. Because, as you can see, I mean, just looking at the map on this date that we're recording this, if you look at the map, 22 states are open, fully open, do what you need to do, and the rest of the states are completely closed or majorly closed. And the states that are open are thriving. Their economies are going crazy, and which is a great thing. But the ones that are closed, and it's all due to the leadership of those states. And what I believe we're going to see is that disparity becomes larger over time.
Oh, and you mentioned division. I can't see how critical race theory brings us together.
No, it's built.
It's not intended to.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I guess when you talk about the states that are open, I mean, you're kind of already seeing, because you've been talking about, well, look at history and how many of these countries that have gone socialist have ever succeeded. Well, you're kind of already seeing that exactly, zero. You're seeing that now in America with the states that are open are the ones that are still following the Constitution, still letting people have their rights, and government, we're not going to take your rights away. The states that are still closed are practicing what they want America to be. And you're seeing which states, like you just said, which ones are thriving, which ones are dying. Mm-hmm. I mean, are people mass moving to California?
No. And California,
New York,
they're massively moving out of that.
Exactly.
Which is a little scary in my mind. but they're moving out by the masses out of California. And what is California doing? They're going to the federal government to get a bailout because they can't make it work.
Yep. And
there is no one that bails out the American government when socialism doesn't work. China just comes and takes us over. I mean, that's the bad end game, if we don't wake up, is because you cannot continue to print money. You cannot, I mean, like nobody's business we're printing money right now. And they're going for an economic reset, which would completely put everybody on the same playing field. So everybody's bank account goes to $25,000, whether you had $1 million in there or whether you had 2,000. We're just going to even you all out, and now you have electric currency. And that's the goal of the economic reset that we're watching right now globally. And I'm very disturbed that we don't have anyone in office that actually doesn't want that to happen. I mean, I shouldn't say in office. I should say in the current administration that doesn't want that to happen. Right. I know there's elected officials that don't want that to happen, but in our current administration, everyone wants this to happen because it will fast track what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's the thing with people just have to sit down and like you said at the very beginning of this show, we're not thinking. We're not being taught how to think because if you're pushing for socialism or you think this is a good idea because, everybody's going to be, like you said, on an equal level playing field, well, you might be sitting there going, oh, yeah, Joe down the street has a great house. He's got a ton of money. I want to be on Joe's level. Socialism doesn't move you up to Joe's level. It moves Joe down to your level. Your life, if your life sucks, your life's still going to suck. That has nothing to do with the government. Like, that is, your life is on you. Like, you know what I mean?
That's why the countries that have done this are the ones that are completely either not existent or the dumps of the world because it brings everybody down to the lowest common denominator. Leadership is not like that. You can't sit in a room of 50 people, get everybody's ideas, and choose the one that's not going to offend anybody in the room, or you get nothing done.
And I think part of that, too, is the fact that it's folks that live everyday lives that are too busy to get involved and not know what's being taught in their high schools. And when they send their kids off to college, what they're being indoctrinated with, really. And, some of that you work 40, 45 hours, 50 hours. You got to go to soccer games, and all that. It's understandable. But the other side is very, very active. And I don't think we're nearly as active as just getting the word out. Yeah. It's not so much that they get confrontational, or anything. That's just getting our message out. I think will bear fruit because it deals with reason and not emotion. I think once you get past the emotion and you start thinking critically.
Well, I just wanted to interject real quick for anybody that's, watching this and they're maybe you haven't been up to speed on this whole critical race situation. You're wondering, well, is my kid going to somewhere is my kid being taught this, or am I about to send my kid to a university? There's a website, it's called criticalrace.org. It's got a map of the United States. You can click on any state, so I can click on Ohio, and it'll show you what schools have critical race theory as part of their curriculum at the university level. So I can scroll down here, and I'll tell you what, I remember checking this maybe a month or two ago when I first heard about this on the news, and maybe there were 7 or 8 schools listed here. The list is growing, and I'm wearing an Ohio State University hat right now. Ohio State was not on this list a couple months ago. It is now. So go to criticalrace.org and search, check it out. I mean, any state, doesn't matter where you live, you can see what schools, and if it's a school that your kid's going to, you might want to reconsider where you're putting your money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And the action part that you were saying, I understand we're all busy. We've all got a lot going on, and we're working mega hours, and we're taking care of kids and doing the basketball, the baseball, the cheerleading, the track, we're doing the musical stuff. We're doing all of it as parents, trying to raise our children to respect other people and to, just hopefully set them up on a platform that they can succeed in life. And the hours and hours of work that the average American is putting into their family and speaking into their kids is being negated by these institutions.
Yeah.
Whether it be a high school, a grade school, or college.
That's exactly right. And it's also that is so true, but it's also important that we invest in our children too. And I wonder if these conversations are ever taking place.
There was a quote, and I cannot remember who said it, but they said, the important thing for a parent to realize is you're not raising kids, you're raising adults. And I think too many parents, maybe in this generation of parents, are just gotten that lazy, mentality of, let the school raise them, or just give them a screen, give them this. Like, you need to be raising adults because that's what you're doing. I mean, they're growing up one way or another. Mm-hmm. There's only one way in life, and it's up. Mm-hmm. So
I like a quote that you said before we went on the air, and that is, equality means everyone gets the same opportunity. Equity means everyone gets the same outcome. Explain that a little bit.
So that's a big thing that I've been hearing in a lot of different outlets is as soon as you hear the word equity mentioned in a conversation, or, a political or, official says something about, we're pushing for equity, or, equity in this or whatever, that's a red flag. Because equity is not equality. Actually, if you look at what you just said, the definitions, they're opposites of each other. So equality is everybody gets the same opportunity, means the sky's the limit, right? You get what you put in, you can set your own way, all that kind of stuff. And we all have that opportunity to do that. You can choose not to.
Right.
You can choose not to. I mean, it's totally fine. There are people that are like, I'm totally fine doing the bare minimum, just kind of getting by. That's my life. I'm good. But for everybody else that wants to say, nope, I want more, you can have more. Equity is the complete opposite. It's everybody gets the same outcome, meaning it doesn't matter how hard you work, how little you work, doesn't matter what you put into it, how much schooling you want to do, research you want to do, how many hours you want to put in. You are capped at whatever the elite says. This is your outcome. This is as high as you can go.
Yeah, that's excellent. Mm-hmm.
So in this discussion, to wrap it up here on critical race theory, they've taken classes and they've injected race. And we're seeing it every single day on the news. And what is the objective of, I know that what we're doing here is hopefully just bringing up the topic so that people can actually know what's going on. But what is the action plan for someone to do this? They go there, they find out that their school, that they're paying a large amount of money every year to for their kid to be educated, is doing this. We have to start, they talk about wealth, they talk about power. We have to start shifting and rewarding the schools that are not teaching this and moving our students to those schools and hurting them in the wealth category.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number. It was like I said, a long march for that side, beginning in the 60s. And, so you're looking at 60 years. It's going to be a long march for us to reclaim some of that territory. And doing just what you said, doing whatever it is that you can do, is sitting down, talking to your kids, being a school board, running for school boards, running for office, paying attention, voting. I mean, it's becoming educators themselves. So it's a long, hard march.
Yep. I think number one, it starts at home with your kids, like you just said. I mean, I was raised in a house where it was the color of somebody's skin doesn't matter. It's all about the content of their character. Are they a good person or not? Like that's the way that you view people.
Colorblind society.
Colorblind, absolutely. And I feel like my life has been great because of it, because I've got so many, friends and people I've met throughout my life, because I went to Ohio State. So I was in classes and, lived in a dorm with people from all over the world. And it was wonderful because you almost celebrated the differences between the different people, because it was intriguing. It was, well, how do you feel about this? Or how did you do this growing up? Or it was cool to see the differences, and you didn't judge somebody or instantly despise somebody just because of the way they looked. So I think kids need to be taught that from day one. And if you as a parent don't believe that yourself, man, we are in trouble. But for those who do believe in the colorblind society, just start paying attention, be aware. You don't have to spend hours listening to things or reading articles and studying this stuff, but just keep your ears open and be aware that this stuff is happening.
Mm-hmm. And have the conversation with a friend.
That's huge.
Have the conversation. Share the information that you're finding. Don't just read an article or don't just watch an episode, but share and say, this is what I'm learning. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's something actually I heard this morning on the way over here. They were saying, we're at a point where you can't just, so you hear this stuff on the news or you see something and you're like, oh, I feel strongly this way or that. Talk to somebody about it. You need to start building your network of friends and close people that you're like, hey, we're going to start bouncing these things off each other. Have the conversations like you just said, because talking about it is the best way to start leading to solutions for this problem.
Just to conclude, the article that I had here with Chris Rufo, I think it's a good summary paragraph. Above all, we must have courage, the fundamental virtue required in our time. Courage to stand and speak the truth, courage to withstand the epithets, courage to face the mob, courage to shrug off the scorn of the elites. When enough of us overcome the fear that currently prevents so many from speaking out, the hold of critical race theory will begin to slip, and courage begets courage. It's easy to stop a lone dissenter. It's harder to stop 10, 20, 100, 1,000, a million, or more who stand together for the principles of America. Truth and justice are on our side. If we can muster the courage, we will win.
Well, thank you for joining us for another special report here on the AGA Network. We look forward to coming to you with other research on these topics and many more as the days unfold.